So, what's the latest buzz about the GM search?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you for making us your first listener or watch of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Big ol' welcome to our everydayers, our Locked On Tar Heels insiders, and our great Locked On Tar Heels Discord family. It's great to be together. Here's where we're going today. First off, mea culpa, I apologize. Completely forgot to give the Tuesday trivia answer yesterday. So we're going to do that at the end of today's show. I promise. It's all in bold later on in my notes. We'll get there. It is February, and that means we got to have bubble talk, right? Yes, bubble talk coming, bubble talk aplenty. I want to catch you up to where things stand right now. But first, where we need to go is more talk on the Carolina general manager search. Yesterday, we talked about this in depth. Coach Davis had said, hey, we are going to do this. And so now we have a little bit more information on it as of a report later on Tuesday evening. But first off, I don't know whether to say you're welcome for the cheesy dad joke off the top or to apologize for the cheesy dad joke off the top. But yeah, I leaned into it because that's what I do. I'm a dad and I'm cheesy. You got to deal with it. But this is why I said that yesterday. Again, we talked about Coach Davis's comments about that he made at Hubert Davis Live on Monday night, where he said, look, yes, we are going to hire a general manager. Ultimately, this is great news. But then on Tuesday evening, as we were watching Georgia Tech beat Clemson in 3 overtimes, there was a report by Joe Tipton, who, typically does all of the recruiting news for college basketball for On3. He quote tweeted his own tweet about the Hubert Davis news and said, quote, Carolina would like to hire a GM from within the UNC family, I'm told. Buzz Peterson is a strong potential candidate according to multiple sources. And then he goes on to talk about Buzz Peterson. So there are two layers to this conversation, and I guess I should add a preamble to those layers because the rumors I had been hearing were that both Buzz Peterson and Mitch Kupchak, who both have GM experience at the NBA level, were essentially helping consult with this idea of a search. I had heard that weeks ago, even before this Hubert Davis news. Well, now we're hearing that Buzz Peterson himself might be a strong candidate, according to the sources that Joe Tipton is hearing. So, to the two layers that I want to say from the Joe Tipton report. Number one, there's the keep it in the family nature of this thing. We know that that's what Carolina has done with their coaching staff. Literally the entire assistant coaching staff is Carolina family. From Hubert Davis all the way down to the most recent hire in Marcus Page. They're all Carolina guys. So it sounds like they, from what Tipton reported, would like to do this with this GM role as well. At some level, I'm great with that, especially because in the Carolina family, you have successful GM type guys at the highest level of basketball, the NBA. But I must be honest, I'm also a little conflicted with it. Because if this means by keeping it in the family, whether assistant coaches or GMs or anything else, if it means that matters more than getting the right coach or the best coach, if it means you're missing on potential coaches or potential GMs who could be better because of keeping it in the family, that to me is flawed. Also, Coach Davis literally had said at his Hubert Davis Live that, quote, the old model for Carolina basketball just doesn't work. It's not sustainable, end quote. Well, the decision to keep the GM hire in the family is literally a continuation of that model. I don't see how you don't see that, right? So, yes, I love the desire to get someone that bleeds Carolina blue into this GM role. But Could there not be options of people who could have a blood infusion? A blood infusion? Could you not adopt someone into the Carolina family that would love to bleed Carolina blue, that would do a phenomenal job? And I'm not saying that Buzz Peterson wouldn't. I'm just saying I don't want to say it's got to be somebody in the family, and then we miss out on like the guy or the girl, whoever that may be. I just want to be careful with that. Layer number 2 to this is the Buzz Peterson. Let's talk about he himself. He is a Carolina national champion. He won the national championship his freshman year, the 81-82 season, played 1981 through 85, all 4 years, 119 games, averaged 4.3 points, shot 46% for his career and 74% from the free throw line. In addition to that national championship, Buzz Peterson went to 2 Elite Eights and to 1 Sweet 16. Literally all 4 years won at least a share of the ACC regular season title. That's crazy. Buzz Peterson today is 61 years old. He kind of his background since Carolina, he's been several assistant coaching stops, and then has been head coach at App State, at Tulsa, at Tennessee, at Coastal Carolina, back to App State, and then UNC Wilmington was the last place, and he was there through 2014. Since then, he's worked with the Bobcats mostly, I completely said that wrong. In between one of those head coaching stops, he worked for the Bobcats. He was the director of player personnel. Since finishing his head coaching career at UNCW, he's been working with the Bobcats. Good grief, the Hornets. I can't get NBA teams right. But so that's what's germane to this conversation, because with the Hornets, he has been the assistant GM from 2017, basically until June of 24. So, there is all of that experience at, again, the highest level. He brings all of that to the table. And there's also this. He was a freshman in 1981, 1982 at North Carolina. Who else, oh, by the way, was a freshman on that team? Who else, by the way, has been, I don't know, even higher in that Hornets organization than Buzz Peterson? And perhaps most importantly, who was Buzz Peterson's roommate? Some kid named Mike that you and I know as MJ, his airness, Michael Jordan. And so I'm just saying, I think Buzz Peterson has all the knowledge, and I think that he has his royal airness's ear. And if that helps us get into the Jordan money in terms of NIL and other things, then that's a massive win for the Tar Heels. The question is, you put that aside, is Buzz Peterson at 61 with, yes, all his GM experience at the higher level, can that translate down to the current state of NCAA basketball? At 61, does he, legitimately, does he have that energy? Is he ready for it? I don't know. I can't answer that question. But these are the types of questions I would want to ask that obviously everyone that's vetting this is going to ask. But those are the conflicting feelings I have as I read and hear and think about this news. Because to this point, I've just been thinking of, hey, Buzz Peterson is consulting on this, meaning probably somebody younger coming in that maybe an up-and-comer with not as much experience. So all of that, there's a give and take, a push and pull, some pro and con, yin and yang, whatever you want to say with it. And there's that. And just on another note, outside of this news, but to the GM conversation, I wanted to start with the positive of, yes, Carolina is now firmly saying that we're going in on a GM. I loved that. But as one of the things that I've thought of on more the cynical side or on the negative side of it is, I'm so grateful that this is finally going to happen. But why do I have to say that it's finally going to happen? Why did it take so long to do this? Coach Banghart has had a GM with women's basketball for multiple years. This whole thing at some level feels similar to me to the NCAA, right? Who they were pulled into NIL kicking and screaming in the summer of 2021. They were just getting, they were drug into this. They didn't lead out ahead on NIL because they saw what it needed to be. They didn't get out ahead of the curve. They were drug in, kicking and screaming. And this feels like this, right? Instead of Carolina, who's a leader on the court, I feel like Carolina should also be a leader in getting out ahead of what's next in NCAA athletics, in collegiate athletics. So for me, I would have liked to have seen this multiple years ago. Oh man, this is what we need to do now to be successful in college basketball right now in this era. Because just because you're have been a blue blood successfully on the court doesn't mean you're guaranteed blue bloodery forever and going forward. So Carolina has to stay ahead of that curve. You got to stay hungry, got to stay thirsty. And I'm not saying they aren't, but part of that in this day and age is hiring this type of role. And I think part of it too, as I think about it, you've got a GM for football in Michael Lombardi. Coach Banghart has a GM. It's not like Bubba Cunningham is telling people they can't have a GM. I think if Coach Davis had gone to Bubba a couple years ago and said, hey, look, this is what's coming, I would love to hire this GM role on our staff. North Carolina basketball, the front porch to North Carolina. Bubba's not going to tell him no to that. And Bubba is out on the front lines of this thing too, man. He is so wise with these things. He's going to tell him yes. There's no way he would have turned him down for that. So while yesterday I celebrated that it's happening, today I'm a little more cynical on it but why just now? Why only now as we are struggling did it take to that point to get here? Again, ultimately, I'm glad we got here, but the timeline is troubling to me. All right. Well, part of that timeline being troubling is because Carolina is in a bad way right now, but there is still hope for the NCAA tournament. Where do those hopes lie and stand right now, and what's going to happen to get there? I'll catch up on all that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time, hey, are you looking to tickets for your next big event? Maybe it's a concert, comedy show, sporting event, whatever it is. Finding the right ticket, man, it really can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the Game Time app does the work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. You just find the best stuff. I've been using Game Time Picks for a while now, scrolling on Game Time, and I love it. Maybe you're looking for tickets to the big game upcoming this weekend. Let me encourage you in this. Keep waiting another day or two. Game Time has these charts that show like the best time to buy, and typically tickets get lower and lower in price the closer you get. So day of is the best, but 3 days out is the second best. So Saturday, Friday, Thursday. If you're looking, wait till tomorrow. That's a great time to do it. Best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. So if you're ready to make your next event even better, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your next purchase. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I do my very best to hold off on any bubble talk until February. It just feels like let's just wait on that. And thankfully, historically, as part of the North Carolina program, we don't even have to really worry about bubbly talk unless we're talking about other teams. But in the last half decade or so, it has been part of our condition multiple times, including this year. And the thing is, I feel like so often when we talk about the NCAA tournament and like, oh, that just ruined our chances and we're out now, or that guaranteed us getting in, all of that, it's all hypothetical, right? Because you don't know what the selection committee is actually doing. You don't know what game is going to be the nail in the coffin. You don't know what game is going to sign your ticket to the big dance, right? You don't know what's going to punch that. And so what I want to do is just give us a frame of reference for where things are at right now for the Tar Heels. And that's the best we can do right now, and we'll go from there. So right now, Carolina sits at 13-10 overall, 6-5 in ACC play, meaning there's 9 regular season games left, all ACC games. As we look at the quad records right now, which if you're new to this kind of talk, the quads, there are 4 of them, and it's just broken down by what ranking the team that you're playing is in the net and whether you're playing them home, road, or neutral. And each game is categorized into one of those 4 quads based on those criteria. You obviously, quad 1 is the best games, quad 4 is the worst games. So right now in quad 1, Carolina has played 10 games and they are 1-9. That's right. 1-9 in quad 1 games. 9 of the 10 losses are sitting there, and just one of the wins is sitting in quad one. That one win is UCLA. That's right. The Dayton win that was a quad one has moved to quad two. In quad two, Carolina is 4-1. That lone loss being the Stanford loss. Thankfully, it shifted from quad three up to quad two. That's great news for the Tar Heels. And then, so we hope that that loss stays there and doesn't bump back down to Q3. And then in Q3, Carolina is 4-0. And in Q4, Carolina is also 4-0. And that's good news. That is one of the best things on the resume right now is you don't have a loss in quad three and quad four. So you got to stay away from that. Carolina in their final 9 games, not a ton of great opportunities, but just north of half. Carolina has 2 quad 1 games left. They have 3 quad 2 games left. They have 3 quad 3s and 1 quad 4. So here's what that means. Let's go in reverse order with it. Of the 4 games that are quad 3 and quad 4, you cannot lose those. Simply put, you absolutely must win those games if you're the Tar Heels. Those games are the NC State game. Carolina hosts NC State coming up. The Virginia game, Carolina hosts them. The Miami game, which is the quad 4 game. Miami has just 1 ACC win so far. It's been a very big struggle this year. And then the game at Virginia Tech is the other quad 3. So let's assume, which we really can't do this year because of Carolina's consistency or lack thereof, but let's assume you win all 4 of those games. At that point, you're 17-10 overall, 10-5 in the ACC. And that leaves you then the 5 games that are quad 1 and quad 2. And these are the games that you want. You want as many of these as you can get because these are opportunities that Carolina has to get meaningful wins to get them into that NCAA tournament conversation. So those games, the game this upcoming Saturday against Pitt is quad 2. You got to get that win. You also need some revenge for losing at Pitt the other week. Gross. The game next Monday, remember, it's a quick turnaround. The game next Monday at Clemson is a quad 1. Clemson, as I said earlier, lost on Tuesday evening in triple overtime to Georgia Tech. They host Duke on Saturday, and then they host Carolina on Monday. So it's a tough stretch there for Clemson. And then Carolina, you know what? Yes, that is right after that. That's on Monday. And then that Saturday, Carolina goes up to Syracuse. That's a quad 2 game. The Orange are not very good, but they're just good enough that it's a quad 2 game. So again, be a great opportunity to win. There's a game at Florida State. Florida State's better than last year. Still not great, but again, a game where Carolina often struggles down in Tallahassee. That's quad 2. And then the regular season finale against Duke is the other quad 1 win. So let's say in those 5 games, you go 3-2. If you combine that with winning all 4 of those quad 3 and quad 4 games, that puts you after the regular season at 20-12 and 13-7. Is that good enough for the NCAA tournament? That's the question right now we got to ask. Some of that is going to depend upon if you do go 3-2 in those quad 1, quad 2 games, who are those wins and losses against? If you beat Duke, that is money. That is the best single thing you can do, and followed closely by winning at Clemson. If you could get one or both of those, that would go a long way. Obviously, of those 2, there's a much better chance to win at Clemson than at home against Duke, but who knows what the turnaround will be. Remember, the year Carolina won at Cameron to end Coach K's regular season career, Duke had beaten them by 20 in the earlier game that season. So there's possibility there, but it's going to be tough. And then I think beyond that, you may be in good shape from an NCAA tournament standpoint at that point, but you've also, don't forget, the selection committee counts what you do in the ACC tournament. So there are opportunities there to pick up another couple quality wins. The key is you just can't lose that first game. Depending on what Carolina does, it's not looking like they will be a top 4 seed right now, which gets you the double bye to Thursday. It's looking probably to me right now, unless they just run the table, like they're going to be somewhere in that 5 to 8 range, which gets you a single bye, meaning Carolina would start on Wednesday. Whoever they're playing on Wednesday, you got to win that game. You don't win that game, you're feeling really bad about where you're at. And probably winning Thursday too would put you in a much better spot. That would be against one of those top 4 seeds. So again, who knows what shape Carolina will be in at that point. It's going to depend on what other teams do around the country. And the best thing you can do is just win so that you don't have to scoreboard watch. The more you win, the better you control your own destiny. And that's what Carolina's got to do. And that's why it's thankful that they have this week off to reset and recalibrate. Well, as part of all this, ESPN's first bubble watch just came out. Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology came out and some other bracketology. So what I want to do next is get to all of that kind of conversation. Where's Carolina sitting at on the bubble in bracketology? We'll get to all that, plus some cool news for RJ Davis. And I promise you I won't forget it, the Tuesday trivia answer, all coming up in just a second. ESPN's Bubble Watch just came out this week and for the first time. And what that is they go conference by conference and just basically look at who's a lock to make the NCAA tournament, who should be in, who still has work to do, etc. And they just go conference by conference looking at that. A lock, they're defining by right now being 95% or better odds to make the NCAA tournament. So yes, there's still a chance that they couldn't make it, which is funny because by definition, that's not a lock, but whatever. And then the teams that should be in, that's teams with a BPI probability of 70% to 94% chance of making it based on 10,000 simulations that they've run for the rest of the season. Those teams are in the should be in category. And that's where Carolina falls right now. The capsule that the ESPN write-up has on Carolina, UNC easily has the talent, we've been saying that, to make the tourney. And that factor alone may help them make it as one of the last power conference teams in. But they're just 52nd in strength of record with a 6-10 record against the top 100 opponents, including just 2-8 against the top 50. A recent loss in Duke in which they were down 19 on average won't help their optics with the committee. But right now, this metric from ESPN puts Carolina at an 87% chance to make the NCAA tournament. I got to be honest here. That seems high to me. I'm not feeling like Carolina's got an 87% chance. I would put it more at 50-50. Now, obviously, my math is just loosey-goosey, and theirs is based on, systems and stuff. But what, right? You agree with that? It feels like it's not that high of a chance. Although, and in the same breath, I do have to recognize this. It happens every year. Little known fact, if you got a tournament that's got 68 teams in it, you got to find 68 teams to put in it. And that gets tough because as you get to the bottom of this thing, every team that's in the bubble has warts all over it. They've got some good things, but they got a bunch of warts. And so that's the thing is you got to distinguish like what sets you apart. What is the differentiator that puts one team in and one team out? So for Carolina, it could be, despite the fact that they've lost most of their really challenging games, they've had one of the toughest schedules in the entire country, particularly in non-con. And the selection committee has shown favorably toward that in recent years in terms of strength of schedule. And so that is a thing. But ultimately, you got to win games. You got to win games if you're Carolina. But also, Joe Lunardi's latest bracketology came out on Tuesday, and he has Carolina out right now, specifically in the next 4 out and the third of those 4 teams. So here's how that, let me tell you, just in case you're forgetting, need a refresher on this. Here's the makeup of the bracket. There are 68 teams that make it in. There are, with the loss of the Pac-12, we are down to 31 conferences in Division I. Of those 31 conferences, all 31 of them get an automatic qualifying team. That's why if you've ever wondered, why are these like any ACC team could beat some of these teams? Well, every conference, so that it's fair, gets at least one team in. It's like the Major League Baseball All-Star game. Every team gets representation. Every conference gets represented in the NCAA tournament. So 31 of the 68 spots go to the automatic qualifier for each conference. That leaves, quick math, 37 what we call at-large teams, the next 37 best teams out there after you remove the automatic qualifiers. So let's say Duke wins the ACC tournament, which is how the ACC determines their automatic qualifier. Then you take them off the board because they're already in and you look at everybody else. And you do that for each conference. Let's say Auburn wins the SEC. You don't consider them. And so it's basically just the next 37 teams that aren't automatic qualifiers. The way we name the nomenclature for these bubbly groups, I like to call them, is last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, and next 4 out. Let me define those for you. The last 4 buys. These are the at-large teams that are in the main bracket, like of 64, and don't have to go to Dayton for the first 4. The last 4 in, these are the teams They're in the field of 68, but they're not yet in the main 64-team bracket. They've got to go to Dayton along with the lowest 4 automatic qualifiers to play for the right to get into the main bracket. So these would be the lowest 4 seeded at-large teams that are actually in the field. First 4 out then would be the teams that just barely miss by the skin of their teeth. So if there are 37 at-larges that make the field, this then would not necessarily be teams ranked 69, 70, 71, and 72, but rather teams ranked like 39, 38, 39, 40, and 41. The teams just outside of that at-large consideration. And then the next 4 out, where Lunardi has Carolina falling right now, would be 42 to 45, basically, if you're thinking it that way. But anyway, just outside looking in. So let me give you those teams that Lunardi has right now, so you know who to kind of watch for and pray that they all lose. Last 4 buys right now. Again, these are the teams that are in the 64. Utah State, Ohio State, Vandy, and UGA. Last 4 in, meaning these 4 teams would go to Dayton: San Diego State, BYU, Pitt. That's why that loss was so critical for Carolina last week, and why it's so critical to beat them this week so you can jump them. Pitt took a rough loss over the weekend. That's helpful as well. And then Nebraska. First 4 out. So the 4 teams that just barely missed the cut right now, he's got UCF, Xavier, Arizona State, who I think lost on Tuesday night. That's good news if so. And USC. That would be the Trojan variety, not the Gamecock variety. And then next 4 out, 3 ACC teams. Wake. That's why it stinks to have lost to them. SMU. Thankfully, we beat them. Carolina. And then Arkansas, who had that big win at Kentucky over the weekend. So hopefully Coach Cal's team keeps sucking and doesn't leapfrog the Tar Heels. So that's where that's at in Lunardi's bracket. But also, it's not just Lunardi's bracket, right? Like, that's just the most popular one to most people. Another website I like to visit that you might want to start frequenting is called Bracket Matrix. What Bracket Matrix does is finds the best regarded, most trusted brackets and brings them all together, takes an average of where they seed teams, and then puts it together based on that. So right now they utilize 88 different bracketologists and bring all their stuff together. Out of those 88 brackets right now, Carolina is in just 24 of them. Yikes. So that's like a little north of a quarter, right? But interestingly, at this aggregate site, they are closer to being in the field than in Joe Lunardi's. In Bracket Matrix right now, Carolina is in first 4 out, and they're the second team out. Meaning, just it wouldn't take much to work your way into the field from where Carolina sits right now. But again, that's why I say just win. And then you don't got to worry about it because you're taking care of your own business. Your fate is in your hands instead of hoping all these other teams around you lose. That's what we're watching for. So that's where things are at right now. Just wanted to update you. If you got questions about how any of that works, please reach out to me. Become a Locked On Tar Heels insider. We can have direct conversations about it. Would love to interact with you more about that. That's part of why I love what I get to do. It's because I geek out on this stuff, and maybe you don't, but you want to know more. Happy to chat with you about it. All right, Jerry West Award top 10 candidates were named on Tuesday. And RJ Davis, who, by the way, reminder, won this award last year as the top shooting guard in the nation, is in that final 10 along with Caleb Love, which is kind of funny amongst a bunch of other people, including Hunter Salas of Wake Forest. I think he's the only other ACC player on that list. But I mean, it's a who's who of shooting guards around the nation. It's a great list and an honor for RJ to make that. Again, obviously, if he's going to win back-to-back versions of this, he's got to go bonkers down the stretch. So there you go. And all right, let's wrap this up. I promised you I'd get to it, and I don't want to waste your time anymore. I did not give you the Tuesday trivia answer yesterday. My apologies, but now I will. On Monday, the Oscar Robertson midseason watch list was released. This is the USBWA's, United States Basketball Writers Association's Player of the Year award. The Oscar Robertson award is. There were 50 players on this list, and Ian Jackson was named to that one, the only Tar Heel on it. My question for Tuesday trivia: 4 other Tar Heels have won the Oscar Robertson award trophy. Who are they and what years? I'll give you a second. There's a second. All right, I'm going to start naming them. I'm going to go furthest back and work my way forward. I'd love to see if you can get these. You ready? Phil Ford, 1978, was the first Carolina recipient of the Big O Award. And then his Royal Airness, we've already talked about him today. Michael Jordan in 1984, his junior year. Then Anton Jameson in 1988, no surprise there. And Tyler Hansbrough, not his senior year. Remember, it was his junior that was his most dynamic year in 2007-2008 season. So there you go. Those are the 4 Tar Heels to win the Oscar Robertson Player of the Year award. Phil Ford, MJ, Anton Jameson, and Tyler Hansbrough. Great stuff there. And hopefully you got some of those answers right. I'd love to know how many you got. All right, gang. Been great to be together today. Really interesting stuff with this GM search. I'm going to keep you updated as I continue to learn stuff and keep having conversations about it. On tomorrow's show, Thursday, Coach Pat Kilby is going to join me. On Friday's show, Coach Rob will be with me to get ready for that Pitt game coming up on Saturday. So lots of good stuff coming ahead this weekend. Obviously on Saturday, we will go live after the Pitt game with, please, dear goodness, be a celebration and not a therapy session. We need it so bad, right? Yes, we do. If you haven't subscribed to the show, man, please do so on both YouTube and audio so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. Help us get to that 10 and 3 we've been talking about. 10,000 YouTube subscribers in the first 3 years of the show, man. It's getting so close. You can be the next one. Hit subscribe right now. Do it. If you haven't joined Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. That link's in the show notes and it's free to join. If you would like to join that Locked On Tar Heels Insiders I was talking about earlier, direct access with me, lots of other perks as well, including access to my stats and charts and data and record books, all of that stuff as part of being a Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. That link is also in the show notes. Gang, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.